Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Hello and welcome to Millennium TV 24 Global News Update. Today is the 5th of March, 2022. Here's today's news. The gunman who killed his three daughters, a chaperone who was supervising his visit with the children, and himself in a Northern California church this week was in the United States illegally. Immigration officials said Friday. David Mara, 39, was armed with what is often called a ghost gun, an unregistered, homemade, semi-automatic rifle-style weapon. His had an illegal 30-round ammunition magazine and 17 bullets were fired. The Sacramento County Sheriff's Office said Mora was under a restraining order that barred him from possessing a firearm, and authorities do not know how or when he obtained it. In quotes, the person who knows these answers said, I think I can safely say he obtained it illegally, end quotes. Sheriff spokesman Sergeant Rodney Grassman said. Mora had been living at the Sacramento church where the killings occurred since he was released from an involuntary mental health hold in April 2021 after threatening to harm himself and his estranged girlfriend, investigators said. Next news. With a backdrop of mountain vistas and a rink of natural ice, the annual ice hockey tournament at Grand Lake offers a picturesque snapshot of Colorado's beauty. What's not apparent is the problem brewing under players' skates. This year's tournament was held a month later than normal, with thin ice forcing organizers to postpone the event, originally scheduled for the third weekend of January. In quotes, we had slushy conditions and less than 6 inches of ice. There was just no way it could safely be held, end quotes, said Steve Kudron, mayor of Grand Lake. That is a reality that many communities that live near lakes, which freeze and provide a myriad of activity during winter months, are increasingly confronting. According to a major UN report on climate released on Monday, as the planet warms, the amount of ice and amount of time it keeps a body of water solid, like ice, are diminishing. Those changes are forcing communities to adapt and curtail some winter activities while also raising the specter of long-term environmental and health issues. Next news. A woman who said her relatives were the 6 people wounded in an overnight shooting that left one man dead at a Las Vegas apartment complex said gunfire erupted minutes after police warned people partying late Thursday on a third floor balcony to leave. In quotes. It just escalated. We were all drinking, said Maria Guzman, a tenant who lives next door to an apartment where crime scene investigators spent Friday morning collecting evidence inside a unit and on the balcony. In quotes. They told me to get my nephews inside or someone was going to jail, Guzman told the Associated Press. In quotes. I put them all inside, then they pushed out the door. End quotes. A woman stopped to talk before taking her children to school, said she saw at least 10 people on the balcony drinking and arguing for several hours before fighting started and then shooting. In quotes. Everyone was intoxicated. End quotes. Nikki Paskovicius said outside a second apartment facing the shooting scene. Quotes. First, 2 people were fighting one-on-one. Then, someone stepped in with a gun. End quotes. Next news. For those who lost loved ones in the opioid crisis, making sure the family behind OxyContin maker Purdue Pharma paid a price was never just about money. What they wanted was a chance to confront the Sackler family face to face, to make them feel their pain. While some may get the chance, at least by video, under a tentative settlement reached Thursday that also would force the Sacklers to pay out billions. The families still are coming away feeling empty, conflicted, and angry yet again. There's a bit of hope mixed in too. Nothing, though, will bring back any of the lives lost or hold the Sacklers fully accountable. in their eyes. Quotes, I'd like to see the Sacklers bleed all they can, but the bigger picture for me is what they're doing to clean up the mess. End quotes, said Vicky Meyer, Bishop of Clarksburg, Maryland, who lost her 45-year-old son, Brian Meyer, in 2017. Quotes, we're also very worried about the next generation and the next child who will be lost. End quotes. We're going to take a short break from the daily English news of Millennium News TV 24/7. Please stay with us.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Hello and welcome back to Millennium TV News 24 Global News Update. Here's the continuation of today's news. Former Vice President Mike Pence urged Republicans to move on from the 2020 election and declared that, quotes, there is no room in this party for apologists for Putin, end quotes. As he further cemented his break from former President Donald Trump. Pence, in a speech Friday evening to the party's top donors in New Orleans, took on those in his party who have failed to forcefully condemn Russian President Vladimir Putin for his unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. Quotes, where would Russian tanks be today if NATO had not expanded the borders of freedom? Question mark. There is no room in this party for apologists for Putin, end quote, Pence said, according to excerpts from the speech which was closed to reporters. Quote, there's only room for champions of freedom, end quotes. Pence did not directly reference the former president, but Trump has repeatedly used language that has been criticized as deferential to Putin, including calling the Russian leader smart, while insisting the attack would never have happened on his watch. Next news. From the earliest days of his first presidential campaign, Donald Trump aggressively challenged the pillars of Republican foreign policy that defined the party since World War II. He mocked John McCain's capture during the Vietnam War. He validated autocrats with his platitudes. He questioned longtime military and security alliances and embraced an isolationist worldview. And to the horror of many GOP leaders at the time, it worked, resonating with voters who believed, in part, that a bipartisan establishment in Washington had brokered trade deals that hurt American workers and recklessly stumbled into so-called forever wars. But Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine is posing a serious test for Trump and his America First doctrine at a moment when he is eyeing another presidential run and using this year's midterm elections to keep bending the GOP to his will. He's largely alone in his sustained praise of Russian President Vladimir Putin as smart, an assessment he reiterated last week during speeches to donors and conservative activists. His often deferential Vice President, Mike Pence, split with him on the issue last Friday. Next news. Walter R. Mears, who for 45 years fluidly and speedily wrote the news about presidential campaigns for the Associated Press, and won a Pulitzer Prize doing it, has died. He was 87. Quotes, "I could produce a story as fast as I could type," Mears once acknowledged, and he was a fast typist. He became the Associated Press's Washington bureau chief and the Wire Service's executive editor and vice president. But he always returned to the keyboard and to covering politics. Mears died Thursday at his apartment in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, 8 days after being diagnosed with multiple forms of cancer. Said his daughters Susan Mears of Boulder, Colorado, and Stephanie Mears of Austin, Texas, who were with him. They said he was visited on his last night by a minister with whom he discussed Alf Landon, the losing Republican presidential candidate in 1936, a year after his birth. Next news. Top Ukrainian cybersecurity official said Friday a volunteer army of hundreds of hackers enlisted to fight Russia in cyberspace is attacking only what it deems military targets, prioritizing government services, including the financial sector, Kremlin-controlled media, and railways. Victor Zora, deputy chair of the State Special Communications Service, also said that there had been about 10 hostile hijackings of local government websites in Ukraine to spread false text propaganda saying his government had capitulated. He said most of Ukraine's telecommunications and internet were fully operational. Zahora told reporters in a teleconference that presumed Russian hackers continued to try to spread destructive malware in targeted email attacks on Ukrainian officials, and in what he considers a new tactic, trying to inflect the devices of individual citizens. We're going to take a short break from the daily English news of Millennium News TV 24/7. Please stay with us. Thank you.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Hello and welcome back to Millennium TV 24 Global News Network. Here's a continuation of today's headlines. Russian troops Friday seized the biggest nuclear power plant in Europe after a middle-of-the-night attack that set it on fire and briefly raised worldwide fears of a catastrophe in the most chilling turn yet in Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. Firefighters put out the blaze, and no radiation was released. UN and Ukrainian officials said. Russian forces pressed on with their week-old defensive on multiple fronts, though they did not appear to gain significant ground in fighting Friday. The number of refugees fleeing the country eclipsed 1.2 million. With world condemnation mounting, the Kremlin cracked down on the flow of information at home, blocking Facebook, Twitter, the BBC, and the U.S. government-funded Voice of America. And President Vladimir Putin signed a law making it a crime punishable by up to 15 years in prison to spread so-called fake news, including anything that goes against the official government line on the war. Next news. Russia's attack on Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant has renewed calls for NATO to impose a no-fly zone over Ukraine. Despite the repeated rejection of the idea by Western leaders concerned about triggering a wider war in Europe. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Friday asked the people of Western Europe to demand that their leaders change course because the shelling of a nuclear power plant in Ukraine threatens the security of the entire continent. Quotes, immediate closure of the skies over Ukraine is needed. End quotes, he said. Take to the streets and say that you want to live on Earth without radioactive contamination. Radiation does not know where the Russian border is. End quotes. The attack did not, as initially feared, result in radiation release. Next news. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday intensified a crackdown on media outlets and individuals who fail to hew to the Kremlin line on Russia's war in Ukraine, blocking Facebook and Twitter, and signing into law a bill that criminalizes the intentional spreading of what Moscow deems to be fake reports. The moves against the social media giants follow blocks imposed on the BBC, the U.S. government-funded Voice of America, and Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. German broadcaster Deutsche Welle and Latvia-based website Meduza, the government's sweeping action against the foreign outlets that publish news, excuse me, Russian news in Russian seeks to establish even tighter controls over what information the domestic audience sees about the invasion of Ukraine. The state communications watchdog Roskomnadzor said it cut access to Twitter and Facebook in line with a decision by the Prosecutor General's office. The watchdog has previously accused Twitter of failing to delete the content banned by Russian authorities and slow down access to it. Next news. The UN Security Council will hold an open meeting Monday on the worsening humanitarian situation in Ukraine as the Russian offensive intensifies. The United States and Albania requested the meeting, which will hear briefings by UN Humanitarian Chief Martin Griffiths and Catherine Russell, Executive Director of the UN Children's Agency UNICEF. Diplomats said Friday. At the request of France and Mexico, the Council meeting will be followed by closed consultations on a draft resolution on the humanitarian plight of millions of Ukrainians that the two countries have been spearheading, diplomats said, speaking on condition of anonymity because negotiations on the meeting have been private. The United Nations launched an emergency appeal on March 1st for $1.7 billion to respond to soaring humanitarian needs of both people who fled Ukraine and who remain in the country. It immediately received pledges of $1.5 billion and has urged that the pledges be turned into cash quickly. We're going to take a short break from the Daily English News of Millennium News TV 24/7 Global News Network. Please stay with us. Thank you.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Hello and welcome back to Millennium TV 24 Global News Network. Here's the continuation of today's news stories. Thank you. The Russian invasion of Ukraine is the largest conflict that Europe has seen since World War II, with Russia conducting a multi-pronged offensive across the country. The Russian military has pummeled wide areas in Ukraine with airstrikes and has conducted major rocket and artillery bombardments, resulting in large numbers of casualties. Here is a look at some of the weapons being used in the conflict. The Russian military has used warplanes and Caliber cruise missiles to hit facilities throughout the country. The Caliber is a precision weapon, but Ukrainian military facilities and government buildings apparently targeted by those missiles in Kiev and Kharkiv are located close to residential areas, resulting in civilian casualties. The same applies to missiles carried by Russian warplanes, which targeted military infrastructure in strikes that also involved collateral damage. Next news. North Korea on Saturday fired a ballistic missile into the sea, according to its neighbors' militaries, extending Pyongyang's streak of weapons tests this year amid a prolonged freeze in nuclear negotiations with the United States. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of State said the missile fired from an area near the North Korean capital flew about 270 kilometers, 168 miles eastward at a maximum altitude of 560 kilometers, 348 miles, before landing in waters between the Korean Peninsula and Japan. It said U.S. and South Korean intelligence officials were closely analyzing the launch. The launch was North Korea's ninth round of weapons tests in 2022, as it continues to use a pause in diplomacy to expand its military capabilities while attempting to pressure the Biden administration for concessions. Flight details roughly matched an earlier assessment by the Japanese military and were similar to North Korea's previous launch on Sunday that was also conducted from the area of Sunan near Pyongyang. Next news. The U.S. will soon begin to run out of money to bolster COVID-19 testing supplies and to guarantee that uninsured Americans keep getting free treatment for the virus unless Congress swiftly approves more funding, the White House warned. Nearly a year after passage of the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, the administration says the federal government has nearly used up the money dedicated directly to COVID-19 response. More money from Congress is urgently needed to buy antibody treatments, preventive pills for the immunocompromised, and to fund community testing sites, officials say. Quotes, from the COVID side, the bank account is empty, end quotes, said COVID-19 Deputy Coordinator Natalie Quillian. Quotes, we're in conversations with lawmakers about how to secure the funding, but it's urgently needed, end quotes. Some of the consequences could be felt later this month. The White House last month told Congress it was preparing to seek $30 billion for the virus response, but cut that to $22.5 billion in a formal request earlier this week that officials said includes only the most critical needs. Being coupled with a $10 billion request to provide support to Ukraine and its people after Russia's invasion. Next news. Purdue Pharma reached a nationwide settlement Thursday over its role in the opioid crisis, with the Sackler family members who own the company boosting their cash contribution to as much as $6 billion in a deal intended to staunch a flood of lawsuits facing the maker of OxyContin. The deal follows an earlier settlement that had been appealed by 8 states and the District of Columbia. They agreed to sign on after the Sacklers kicked in more cash and accepted other terms. In exchange, the family would be protected from civil lawsuits. In all, the plan could be worth more than $10 billion over time. It calls for members of the Sackler family to give up control of the Stamford, Connecticut-based company so it can be turned into a new entity with profits used to fight the crisis. The deal would not shield members of the family from criminal charges, although there's no indication any are forthcoming. This has been the Daily Global News Update of Millennium News TV 24/7. Thank you for watching. Please log in to get the latest news on all of our social networking sites: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. On TikTok, we are Millennium News 24. Also, like, subscribe, comment, and tell your friends. Our YouTube channel is News Channel M24. News Channel M24. Viewers, now both on network broadcasting, Android, and iOS devices: Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV. Also, all smart TV platforms. Please enjoy our entertainment and latest news, views, current events, and editorials. Our Millennium TV apps: Millennium TV USA. Android, we're on Android. Millennium News Google. Google us. Also, www.millenniumnews24.com. Please stay with Millennium News 24/7. Thank you so much, and I wish you a pleasant tomorrow. Thank you.